welcome to another episode of Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. I'm your host, Amanda, and my fabulous co-host is...
Hello, I'm Megan.
So for those of you who follow a somewhat traditional calendar school year, we'll say, the start of the new school year is just upon us, right? Some people I know have already started. It's mid-August. Some will be just getting ready to start when you actually hear this towards the end of August. And with the incredible growth that we're seeing in the homeschool community, we thought we would take a little trip down memory lane and discuss what we would do differently if we could redo our first year of homeschooling.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we jump into that topic, though, we always start our episodes with a recap of our weeks. If you're new here, first of all, welcome. But second of all, it's important for you to know that Amanda and I never put a super shiny twist. We never come in with this perfect facade. Although I do have new lipstick today, which is like, I'm feeling pretty fancy.
It was a big deal. We talked a lot about getting new lipstick this last week.
I started thinking about the things that I put less time into deciding on than this lipstick. And like, I thought about the fact that we went to Antarctica earlier this year on a last minute trip, and I made that decision quicker than I bought a new lipstick. So this was a really big move in my world. But what we will say at Homeschool Moms Unfiltered is we love our kids. We love homeschooling. We're not those people that show up and complain about our kids all the time. But that doesn't mean that some days aren't just hard as fuck. Like this is hard, right? It's not always easy. So we show up as our authentic, frazzled selves. And if you're ever feeling overwhelmed and like you need more hours in the day, you're not alone. We are your people. So without further ado, how's your week been, Amanda?
I feel a bit like a broken record. I will say, so for the last couple of weeks, I've been talking about how I've been really run down and feeling like I was just, one minor thing away from being bedridden. And I actually had the time I was able to clear my schedule. So I had a few days to really recharge and take it easy. So the beginning of the week, I was feeling really good. I'm feeling a little rough today. But I think that's just because yesterday was a bit of a big day. And so, yeah, I'm feeling like I'm finally starting to recharge, maybe one more weekend of really taking it easy. And I'll be back to not a normal baseline, but maybe my normal these days. Though I was also just telling you right before we started recording, I'm like, I don't know, on day 10 or something of a headache. And there's a dog that also has a headache. It's just like, what are you doing?
Waffles is like, you think you have it rough.
Yeah. I have people in my basement. They are trespassing. No. So yeah, I need to stop eating ibuprofen like candy and figure out how to actually get rid of this headache. I don't know. So yeah.
That does stink. And for anybody who's new, Amanda has chronic health issues, so she doesn't just come and just be like, I'm tired, right? Like that's why but I feel like when you say like you feel like a bit like a broken record, I feel like that's how life works sometimes, where you end up in these lulls that just and you start to feel like people are going to be sick of my shit if I keep talking about it, because like I am a broken record, and people are going to be like, for fuck's sake, we get it, like enough, but that's how life works, right? Where sometimes you're just in these patches where it feels like nothing goes well, right? Like it's like you get hit with this, you get hit with that, you get hit with this, and it's tough to kind of break it. Sometimes it takes time to break out of that and then also recover from being in it in the first place.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I think that's one of those things. We don't talk about it very much, and we definitely don't talk about it here because this is a homeschooling moms podcast, right? But if you're in the chronic illness community, sometimes it does feel really isolating, because the reality is more than 50% of your time is being a broken record, right? I mean, it's chronic. It's not going away. It's not getting better. And it's been going on for years, decades, and so yeah, it informs everything that you do, and it makes some weeks easier and a lot of weeks harder. And you get a lot of that, like, just take a nap. Like, oh boy, do I ever wish that taking a nap actually worked. I wish that helped anything at all.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have chronic illness, but I've been saying to my mom lately, like, I think I just need like a solid week of sleep at this point, because my brain has been working on overdrive for so many weeks on specific projects and things like that. And I feel like mental fatigue is so valid. I'm not running marathons and I'm not but just my brain is going on like 7 different things too that I'm trying to juggle. And I'm like, I think I could sleep for a week at this, no problem. Like right now, I could put my head down on my desk and just wake me up next week when it's time to record,
Yeah.
And it's
Oh.
hard sometimes when you feel that behind. And I don't have the
Mhm.
chronic illness factor. I'm just freaking tired.
Yeah. No, that's it, right? And everyone, this episode is the perfect example, right? Everyone is trying to get in the last minute summer things and the stuff that you wanted to do or get done. And they're trying to plan and make sure that they got their kid into this class or that class. They didn't forget to register for this one before it's full. And they're like that mental load, right? Especially of the
Yeah.
homeschool mom. There's so many things on your plate and stuff inevitably is rolling off of your plate. It's like instead of having normal food on there, you've got all ping pong balls or something. Like, oh, I want to stay on the plate. Giant mixing bowl, not a plate.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So, how about you? What have you got going on?
Well, thankfully, my week is better than last week. Last week, I had just barely finished crying before we recorded, so we're improving. Although that was my mini prequel cry to Thursday, which was the day after we recorded, where we had Tropical Storm Debbie last week, and we just had damage upon damage upon damage, right? And our pool took a huge hit, and I just see dollar signs of like, how on earth are we going to do that? Like, it's just so much. And so on Thursday, we had people out looking at it and whatever. And I had a team meeting I have like a contract job that I do. And I showed up and I was like, I'm okay. Like I cleared my face and I showed up. And then the second my coworker who I adore was like, how's your week? How are you? And I just lost it. And I ugly cried through the entire team meeting. Like we talked about no work whatsoever. But that was like the cry that got it out of my system. So in a way, it was kind of good.
Yeah.
So things have gotten better. The pool situation is on the mend. So that's, it is what it is, right? Unfortunately, when you live and you probably have the same thing, Amanda, because you're in Southern California with earthquakes and stuff, like, are your deductibles for insurance so high that like you can't even really use your insurance? That's how life in hurricane land is.
I think I don't actually know
Oh, because you're in a condo building. It's not the
we're
same.
in a condo, so we have a pretty low deductible in our condo.
Gotcha.
So yeah, we're pretty fortunate from that regard.
Deductibles are so high, and so because of the hurricanes and whatever, and so it's like you just have to suck it up and pay for it. And I'm like, okay, this is great. I have an extra, however many thousands of dollars sitting here ready to be put towards this. Great, but it's on the mend. That's okay. It's fixed. So this week has been better. Some of my highlights are so one of my kids is off at camp. He's at Not Back to School Camp, which is an awesome unschooling camp for any unschoolers that are out there. I have not heard from him in 9 days, so I'm assuming that's code for I'm having the time of my life, right? Yeah. With COVID being so rampant, I'm so happy every day that he, I don't get a call from medical that he's, because they're testing. There's a camp blog. I haven't heard from my kid, but other kids will blog for the camp blog. And so, like they talked about like a day in the life of, and it was like, oh, we did our COVID test. I had to send him with 2 and, all that stuff. So as long as I haven't heard anything, life is good. He'll come home exhausted and happy. And my other 2 kids are taking college courses this summer, and it's finals week. So it has been really quiet in my house because the 2 of them have just been pounding for finals. My youngest is he's only taking, obviously, I shouldn't say only, he's 12. He's taking 1 college class this summer. He decided to take college algebra. If your 12-year-old is not taking college classes, please do not. He's autistic. He has the autism where the brain is like, math is my thing, right? That's everybody's, brand of autism is different. Yeah, exactly. Right. Everybody's brand of autism, emerges differently, and his is the numbers kind. So this is his idea of a fun summer. So he's taking his final today. I have an apple pie in the oven. A Dutch apple pie is like a surprise for tonight. We're going to celebrate the end of math. Nice. So that's exciting. He's taking that through Arizona State. My other kiddo has finals on Friday. So it's just been kind of quiet around here because they've been like heads down, which has been interesting. And then I started reading, and I think I messaged you about it yesterday. Yes, I did. The Penn and Kim Holderness book, ADHD is Awesome.
Yes.
It is so good. So good. I'm doing the audiobook, which I would 100% recommend. I love it when people read their own books. Like when Trevor Noah read his, like, to me, the physical copy of Born a Crime is not even worthwhile. Their audiobook, holy cow. I mean, it's
Mhm.
good physically. The physical
Yeah.
book is good, don't get me wrong, but it can't hold a candle to him reading it, right? It's
Mhm.
not even close. And this is really good because it's kind of like read a narration of an audiobook mixed in with some podcasting, because they kind of interact with one another a little bit as well.
Mhm.
And it's just amazing. So that'll be my dog walking book for the next couple of days and my errand running book for the next couple of days until I finish it. But it's really good. So
Nice.
thankfully, a better week. Whew, and new lipstick. So, if you're watching, I hope you're enjoying.
Yes, absolutely. Hey, I washed my hair. I did not get my hair washed all week last week. It went like, I don't know, like 8 or 9 days, right? Like I just kept putting it in a bun. No one will
Yep.
notice. It's pulled back in a bun. Like less messy, more greasy bun. But I washed my hair for you people today, so you should watch, okay?
Talk that
Oh,
video.
Lord. All right. So back to the topic of the day. If we could redo our first year of homeschooling, what would we do differently? All right. So I thought it would be fun to just kind of bounce back and forth and share one of our do overs and then kind of just take turns sharing. What do you think?
Solid plan. I'm totally game.
Okay.
One quick note, though, before we travel back in time on our hindsight is 2020 kind of journey of thoughts. We did want to let you know that we are launching a Patreon account with all kinds of awesome resources. I'm so excited. In fact, there's a free resource over there right now. It's available to everybody. It's public. You don't have to sign up, or I mean, you probably have to have a Patreon account, but you don't have to pay for it or anything like that. It's totally free over there waiting for you right now.
Yes. So there are two membership tiers. I don't know how familiar you are with Patreon, but usually there are a few different membership tiers. So we have two set up right now. The first tier comes with a free themed resource document every month. And to help you better understand what we're actually talking about here and what that looks like, we do have a free sample over there. It's all about hurricanes resource guide. It seemed rather appropriate. It includes videos and book recommendations, STEM experiments, spin-off topics, worksheet type activity, right? It's just got a whole bunch of different things in it. It's a really great resource that you can use as a unit study. You can use it for interest-led deep dives. You can do help use it to foster some sort of an interdisciplinary study, or it can just be the supplemental learning that you use on those days where you're an educational homeschooler like me and you just can't do the curriculum, right? For whatever reason, your kiddo is like it's just not working. Like busting out the books is not going to work today, but you don't want to just throw it all in. This would be a great thing to pull out for that day and have something interesting to learn about. Lots of great resources. It's still educational, but it doesn't feel like your math textbook and your history textbook and whatever else. So basically what we're trying to say is that we have worked very hard to make sure it's a resource that can be used by unschoolers like Megan and aggressive academic homeschoolers like me and everyone in between.
Yes, I love that. Then we have a second tier, which includes 2 live meetings a month with both Amanda and myself. One is a homeschool Q&A, so very topical. You can come in, you can say, I need curriculum help. Amanda will help you. I need help deschooling my brain. We can both help you. I want to talk neurodivergence. I don't understand the way my ADHD kid functions. Come, chat with us. We'll be there. It'll be super fun. The other one is kind of a combo mom's night out, happy hour, friendship circle, whatever. And I have committed to developing our first month, which is September, as a 90s themed trivia night. So I'm super excited.
She's going to kick my ass.
Yeah.
Like trivia is not that's not my strong suit. So you'll want to be on team Megan, not team Amanda.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes. It's going to be super fun. So there's a link in our description. So come check it out. Come check it out. Come hang out with us. It'll be super fun. And the resources are awesome. September's resource is about Labor Day, not the barbecues and beaches kind of Labor Day, which is what it's kind of become, but the actual labor movement. So there's so many resources in there. So I hope you'll love it.
Yeah, no, that's it. It's really great. Megan has put a ton of effort into this, and then I come in and say like, "Oh, I like this. We should change it this way, or let's make sure we add this for the academic homeschoolers." But like, there's a ton of great things that I was like, "Oh, that's I didn't even know that. I hadn't heard of that, so they're great resources full of awesome stuff. This is totally her jam and her wheelhouse. So
Well, I enjoy research like there's no tomorrow. But then to your point, like I need somebody to come in at the end because my brain does work like a house on fire. So I need somebody to come in at the end and be like, there's a gaping hole here that you've missed, or, you need to refine that or whatever, because yeah, it's there's definitely like a partnership to be had when my brain is going in 17 directions at once.
yeah, but I mean, that's the great thing, right? I mean, all along that has been the like,
That's
we
our
can
jam.
both bring our own perspective and make sure that we help the other person remember, like, hey, you're really good at what you do, but don't forget there's this other perspective here. You can also do it this way, right? I was just writing a comment to someone in a Facebook group about homeschooling, and they were asking, how can you possibly world school? It seems so expensive. And at the very end of my comment, I said a whole bunch of things, but at the end of the comment, I said, look, it's important to remember that there are lots of ways to do it right and very few ways to do it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think so often in life, we get hung up on trying to do it the right way. Like, there's one singular right way. There are lots of ways to do things right. And truly, yes, there are a few ways to do it wrong. That, you're looking at it and it's wrong for your family, or it's, like you're just really failed your kids. But those are really few and far between.
Mm-hmm. And if you're here listening to a podcast because you want to learn more about homeschooling and better understand homeschooling, you're not the person who's going to end up in that boat anyway. You're already putting the effort in, you're putting the work in. You'll do an awesome job, which is great.
That's it. If you care enough to listen to this podcast or to read a book or to research anything at all, you're not the one doing it wrong. You're okay. Right. All right. So let's go ahead and kick off our homeschool hindsight discussion with some background info. So Megan, how old are your kids? You kind of alluded to it earlier, but let's cover how old are your kids and how long have you been homeschooling?
16, 15, and 12. Okay. And I lose track all the time, but I'm pretty sure this is our 10th year homeschooling. And we are unschoolers. My 16 and 15 are pretty much fully in college now. I'm not really homeschooling them anymore. And my 12-year-old is, he's just rocking. He's doing his own thing. He's enjoying life, taking classes, taking college math, having a good time. So yeah, that's my story. How about your kiddo?
Right. So I have one child. He is 10, and we are going into our 5th year of homeschooling, not counting that weird half year of kindergarten when school shut down at the beginning of the pandemic. And it was, it was a mess, right? We'll just call that the messy year, not the homeschooling year. Right. So, all right. So let's go ahead and dig in. Megan, what would be your first do-over?
My number one do-over would have been pulling my oldest kid out of school the minute I knew it wasn't working, right? I kept trying to make it work and it was never going to work. But I was scared. So he's 16 now. He was in school. He did great in school. His grades were great. He was, in the top reading group, the top spelling group, the top this group, whatever. The teachers loved him. He was sweet. He was never a behavioral issue. He's a good kid to this day. He's a good, sweet kid, right? But he hated school. Absolutely hated it. And he was shrinking as a human being in that environment. And so the first thing that happened was his teacher said, hey, I would love to get him tested for a whole bunch of stuff through the school psychologist. And because he was in a school with 1,600 children, which is disgusting in and of itself, it took almost a year to get him tested. So we held on throughout that. And then we get the testing and I'm like, great, now what? Then we had a hearing, which was like another 4 months or something, which it's in Florida, at least, I don't know how it works everywhere. It was a set number of school days, but by the time you factor in weekends and teachers' days and spring break and whatever else, that took forever for us to accomplish, all for me to sit down. And this was in like October, November, I want to say, and go to that meeting. It was my first IEP meeting, and have it be the biggest waste of time ever. And the IEP not worth the piece of paper it was written on. And I should have pulled him that day. That should have been the end, right? I waited all this time. I gave you your chance. You've continued to do nothing. You've continued to fuck up my kid in the process. We're done here. But I had it. The kid was like 7. This is so stupid, right? But I had it in my head. How will I pick up mid-year? This was what I was afraid of. How will I know what he's already covered between August till now to finish the year and not leave any gaps? after all these years of homeschooling, it's the dumbest, stupid thing ever, right? Like,
Yeah. But we all worry about it, right?
right.
Every parent who's thinking about homeschooling after their kid has been,
Yep.
whether it's in preschool or daycare, like it doesn't matter if they've been in some kind of organized program. It's that concern. How do I make sure that I don't miss something they were
Oh
supposed to
my
learn that
gosh.
year, right? Like,
I
and
know.
it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. You figure it out. You pick it up along the way. At some point, you might realize like, oh my gosh, how did you not learn that? Like, okay, well, let's go back and do that. But you know what? Spoiler alert, kids in public school miss things too. And you
All
have
the
to do
time.
the exact same thing for them, right? You get to fourth grade and you're like, how do you not understand a number line? Like, let's go back and work on that. You're supposed to have that by now. Like it does not matter. Homeschool, public school, kids miss things.
Yeah.
It is not a problem to go back and figure it out when you realize it.
Well, and the reality is, and you might differ with me in opinion on this since we have such different backgrounds or like the way we approach our education philosophy, but there's really nothing you can do with a 7-year-old aside from like those extreme cases of like child neglect, like you referenced earlier, right? There's nothing you can do with a first grader that makes or breaks their education. Nothing.
Uh-uh.
Like, I'm sorry. Absolutely. You could take the whole year off and it would be fine,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like,
Yeah.
nothing. And the public school system has you convinced that from the moment they enter, they're on this like fast track and they need to keep up and be moving. No, none of that is true. Absolutely none of it is true.
Yeah.
My 16-year-old is in college. He's fine. He's more than fine, right?
But the thing is I would argue that there's nothing you can do as far as like taking a whole year off or missing something for an entire year at any age level.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Like there is no rule that says if you don't start college by 18, you can't start college, right? Like if you need to take a year off, heck, if you just want to take a year off for some other big life adventure and you're like, you know what, look, we're going to do this amazing trip and it's going to teach us loads of life skills and all kinds of people and geopolitical stuff. But you know what, frankly, it's not going to teach us any math and we'll get back to our math later. It's okay.
It's
right?
all fine.
Like,
yep.
It's okay.
And the reality is I left him in school for that year because I was scared to pull him. More, and the damage just exponentially compounded to my child to the point that he was almost mute by the time I pulled him from school. I couldn't tell you the last time the kid had smiled. It was so terrible. And I left him there because I was afraid. And I would never do that again. And the reality is it took me more time to recover my child than if I had just pulled him mid-year and been like, screw it. If he misses something, quote unquote misses, he's not missing anything. But like if that's in my mentality, because it took me over a year to really start to, I mean, it was slow and incremental, right? So it took like, 3 months in, 6 months in, 9 months in, I started to see more and more of my child. But it took over a year for my kid to like really start to shine through again after and he did well in school. He wasn't a behavior issue. He had a loving teacher, right? It wasn't like when I say he had trauma from school, it wasn't like, he had this horrendous teacher and she was amazing. She was Canadian. She was like as sweet as they get, right? But, the environment for him was a crucible. He's neurodivergent. Our public schools are not neurodivergent affirming. They just aren't. No matter how amazing your teacher is, the structure is not. In fact, side note, there was a thing in that Penn Holderness book that I was reading where he said, like, if you took like this top-notch scientist and asked him to design a model that would ruin an ADHD person's day, it would be a typical American classroom or a typical corporate office, right?
Yeah.
Like that these are just like prison environments for that brain type. And so there you go. So do not wait. The minute you know it's not working, pull your kid. You can do it. You don't need a plan to pull your kid either. You pull your kid, you need to deschool anyway. You need to stop and take time and recover, both of you, for you to learn, for your kid to recover, all that kind of stuff, to kind of deprogram your brain of what society has told you education is. You don't need to know what your curriculum is. You don't need to know how you're going to do any of it. Just pull the kid. When you know it's not working, take them out of school. If the school system or your state or your county says that you have to have a plan, write a curriculum down. Pick something, right?
Yeah,
you're not married to it. Write it down.
Tell them you're doing something free. Tell them you're doing Khan Academy or IXL or, one of those like super free, easy ones.
Done.
And yeah.
Yep. How about you? What's your first 2020 hindsight moment, Amanda?
Well, mine is very me, right? I would have started with a true phonics based program earlier, right? We were hodgepodging it, and so my kiddo did do kindergarten at a Montessori school. We made that decision to do that, and he really loved it. But I was kind of relying on the school to do most of like the foundational teaching of reading. And when he got sent home, we had to do some of it at home. But again, like I wasn't in the mindset of like, well, I'm paying this private school tuition, so let me go buy a phonics curriculum and make sure I teach him phonics, on my own while he's still attending this private school. And so, it just kind of like continued on that way where I was letting kind of outside factors influence how he was learning phonics. And they kept assuring me like, oh, he's getting phonics. Oh, he's getting phonics. And he was, but not enough phonics. And so by the time we were ready to like really take the reins on it and make the decisions about what curriculum he's using and like be all in and in charge, we did the placement testing, and he was already in level 2 of All About Reading, which is fine. And we started at level 2, but I really think that he would have benefited and things would have been easier in the beginning given our style of learning if we had started with a true phonics based program that was, it's OG and all of that kind of stuff, kind of just from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we never did phonics, so I don't have a ton to add to that. I let Leap from Leapfrog teach my kids phonics, right? So I don't have a ton of like, yes, in my experience, right? Because we're very unschooly, but yeah. I will know the Leapfrog song until the day I die. So, we got there somehow.
Yeah.
I love it. All right. My next one is I would have listened to the What Kind of Homeschooler quiz are you from the beginning when it told me that I wasn't a traditional school person. Okay, whether we realize it or not, especially if you live in the United States, you have decades worth of programming in your brain telling you what education is, how it must look, the only way that it works, the only way your kid will be successful. And whether you like it or not, it continues to kind of creep up into your thought process. And so I never liked school. We've talked about this in previous episodes. I mean, I did it and I was a good student mainly because it was required to play sports. So I did what was required of me. I got my degree because I was like, oh, I should probably have a degree, but I didn't love school the way Amanda loves school, right? I went to kindergarten roundup, which is like in Florida was like our touring of the school day with your preschooler. And I was excited going into it. I was like, oh, this is going to be so big, like first time going, like the whole thing. And I felt like I was at juvenile hall. And I literally left and I was like, I'm pretty sure that was a prison disguised as an elementary school. And we lived in the place to live, right? What we were paying for housing and taxes for this school, I cannot even tell you. And so it's not like it wasn't, a desirable school. It was like the best of the best for public school. And I hated it. And so then when we started to homeschool, I started taking these quizzes online, which we have a bunch of them linked in our link tree. If you go on like our Instagram profile, they're all there. But you can just Google like, what kind of homeschooler are you quiz? There'll be a bunch of them. In our very first episode that Amanda and I recorded, we took a bunch of them and shared our thoughts on them and things like that. I'm a huge fan of taking multiples so that you can kind of cross-reference the results and validate them. Because as loosey-goosey as I am, I love data. And so I took all these quizzes and all of them told me that I was Montessori and Charlotte Mason and unschooler and this and that. And I was like, unschooler, no how, no way. I can't just not educate my children, because that was my impression of unschooling, having no clue what it actually was. And unfortunately, right now we're kind of in this period of people thinking that again, thanks to this TikTok person that went viral, right? Who was like not maybe the best representation for unschoolers as a whole. If what she's doing for her family works for her, that's awesome. But we've all been kind of lumped into the same approach. And unschooling is a very large spectrum. But so I bought some textbooks, if you will, quote unquote. They weren't really, it wasn't like what Amanda does. I went on Amazon and bought like the complete 4th grade workbook that was like 3 inches thick, and it's super basic, but it kind of made me feel like I was doing something. And then we very quickly were like, this is stupid. So we morphed into unit studies. And then unit studies were good for a little while, but all of us were kind of in this mode where we were like, we kept doing a thing and it just wasn't working. And so finally we just cut the cord completely and went full unschooling. And that was our thing. So if I had just listened to it from the beginning, instead of being like, that can't be right. Listen, when 5 quizzes tell you the same thing online, like there might be something to it, is all I'm saying. So take the quizzes, see what's there. Don't discount them, is my only bit of advice in 2020 hindsight.
Yeah, I think back to how I felt like we really needed to do unit studies because that seemed like what everyone was doing. And our quiz told us, right, like you're eclectic, you like these different things, and traditional was part of it, but it was definitely like you're an eclectic homeschooler, which I was like, yeah, I can totally see that. Like you can still be quite aggressive academic and want to learn from different input methods in different ways, right, based on what your kid needs. But yeah, see, like unit studies, that's the thing, at least when we were starting out. And I feel like it's still a pretty big, like, oh, if you're homeschooling, you should do, like, unit studies do not work for us. I'm like, I have so many unit studies saved on my computer that we will never use because I'm just like, I look at them like, what a waste of time, money, and effort. Like, we just hated that. Both of us, right? Like, they just didn't work for either one of us.
Right.
It's just not our style. So yeah, like, believe it and do what works for you. Like, don't be so hung up on like, well, this is what it's supposed to be. This is what we're supposed to do, right? Yeah.
The people who made the thing that it's supposed to be also just made it up, right? Like,
or they sell it, right?
Right. Yes,
like
that too. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the reality is, right, there's 1,000,001 studies telling us that what the public school system is doing isn't the way kids learn. It isn't effective. It isn't this, it isn't that, but we're still doing it. So it's like they've truly just made it up and been like, it's kind of the same logic as me getting all the unschooling results and being like, but I'm not going to do that thing. The public school system is basically doing the same thing. It's like, I see your 700 studies telling us that we're ineffective. We're going to do twice as much of what we're already doing. That will surely be the solution.
That'll fix it. Yeah. Exactly. We'll do more of it and we'll overcome that.
So it's like, they don't know what they're doing. They've completely made it up, right? And it's not working. And they're just refusing to acknowledge that it's not working. So you're good. Cut the cord. Do whatever you want. Do what's working for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So my next one would be, I wouldn't have bought a full year's worth of curriculum in July and August, right? And I did it for the first couple of years, and I finally learned not to. And that's one of the things that I always tell people. There was someone in a very specific group that I'm in that was just saying, should I buy Singapore Dimensions, A and B, both, and this and that? And the first question was like, it's a little more complicated because we're here in California and she was using instructional funds, which come from the state, and you have to put it through your teacher. And so it's more, it's not as easy as do I just get them? There's a few more steps involved and you want to make sure you have enough instructional funds to buy the whole curriculum. But at the same time, my question was like, well, have you ever used it before? First off, do you know it works? And then even if you know it works, just because it worked for a couple of years doesn't mean it's going to work for the next couple of years. Buy the first book, buy the first semester's worth if that's what you want to do, but don't buy the second semester's worth until you've finished the first or you're almost done with the first and like, yeah, we want to keep going. Because I don't know about you. Maybe there are people out there who homeschool and are like, we have so much money, we just love to throw it away. But that is not me. And, it sucks to have spent, that money, like paid full price, or even if you were able to get it, gently used and you got a good deal, you're still not going to get quite the same amount of money, or you're going to spend time and effort reselling it. And it's hard. It's hard to stop something when you know that you've already paid for it. Know you're going to lose money on it. So that would be something I wish I had learned sooner. Like, don't buy it all at the beginning of the year.
I feel like that's the thing where, like, when your kids get really into something that they're eating and they're like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing I've ever eaten in my whole life. And so you're like, oh, well, I can get it cheaper if I buy it on Amazon in like a case. And so you buy it, and then the next day they're like, this is not good. I don't like this. And you're like, for fuck's week. I just bought a case of this. Like,
Yeah.
it's like you were loving it and now I bought a whole bunch and now you're not loving it, right? And so
Yeah.
yeah,
We have 2 boxes of freeze-dried pineapple in our kitchen right now, like, because that's exactly what happened. Like, I was having to like, "No, you cannot eat another one already. Like, we don't have enough, like, just slow down." And so I finally bought a bunch, and he hasn't asked to eat it in, I don't know, a month or something.
right. So it's a slow and steady progression.
Yep. Yep.
Oh my gosh. All right. Before we continue with our memory lane journey here, we have a new sponsor to tell you about this week, which
We
I'm super
do.
excited about. So we want to tell you all about it. It's this amazing new platform for homeschoolers called Recess. I have signed my kiddo up for it. He hasn't had a chance to fully dive in because he's been so focused on his math final for the last week or so. It has been like practice test to practice test to practice test, but he finishes today. I guarantee you tomorrow this will be like option number 1, because just even the visual appeal of the website to him was like, when can I get to this? It's just the layout of it is so appealing and so awesome. So Recess's mission is to help homeschoolers make friends and develop hard skills. Love it. They have a really interesting approach that is inspired by the Montessori type interest-led approach to learning and also the MIT Media Lab.
Yeah. So here's how they do it. They meet with your kiddo where they're at in their favorite games. And then in those games, they offer them harder and harder challenges to turn their interests into real skills. So everything they do is centered around kids being social together and working together. So this is one of the things that I actually really liked and caught my interest. Every class comes with a moderated chat so that your kids can talk to their friends outside of dedicated class time. Now, there are a lot of other resources out there, and some of them we really use and like, but they're almost all across the board missing this piece. If a kid makes a friend in class, they have a really hard time figuring out how to keep that friend when that class ends. And so I do really like that aspect of Recess.
And it puts the onus on us as parents to make that connection and keep that and help them make that. And it's like, I have enough on my plate, right? So the fact that this can be done on Recess in a safe environment. So there's a lot of opportunity for kids to connect and make friends and things like that. Probably the best part, or at least my favorite part, is their mission to understand every kid. The teachers meet together, they spend time getting to understand what each kid needs, how they can help them grow. It's totally different from other marketplaces or classes. There's a more, we're only just beginning to explore it, but I'm super excited because it's already got more of a community feel than what we have found elsewhere, which is really exciting.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's that thing. If helping your kids make friends and giving them a child-led education is something that sounds interesting to you, it's definitely worth checking them out. Their website is recess.gg. So that's RECESS.gg. And parents from amazing institutions, everything from Harvard, MIT, and Princeton to NVIDIA, Apple, and more, trust their classes, right? So we really, as parents, we're just looking for a quality resource where our kids fit in and it helps them become the amazing humans that we know they're meant to be. And I really do think that Recess might be that resource for you and your family, right? So we want to say thank you to Recess for sponsoring our podcast, and definitely let us know in the comments or send us an email if you get a chance to check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I met with the founder last week, and it's totally my jam because it is a very like organic learning experience. And so that's just totally my jam. But we had a meeting that was scheduled for, I think, a half an hour or 45 minutes, and we were on for like an hour and a half, right? Just kind of jiving about education and the big picture and all that kind of stuff. And so it's nice to know that the person who's at the helm of a new project like this, that you align with them, right? And that they get it, and you two can just kind of banter back and forth, and you're on the same page and all that kind of stuff. And my educational philosophy does align with the Recess educational philosophy. So it was a pretty cool session for me. I had a super good time, and I know my 12-year-old is super pumped to get on there and start testing it out and really being able to immerse himself once he's done with math, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. So back to our 2020 hindsight journey of what we would do differently if we were redoing our first year of homeschool. So one of my big pieces of advice, and I see this every day, is ask veterans for advice. And when they give you their advice, trust them. So here's the deal, right? I see, and right now this has been daily because it's the middle of August and people are jumping in, right? And I'm seeing it everywhere from 3-year-olds to 5-year-olds. Hey, I've made the decision to homeschool my 4-year-old, my 5-year-old, whatever. What curriculum should I buy and how should I get started, right? And there's all these veterans that jump in who are like, no, no, right? If you haven't listened to our episode entitled What the Fuck Did We Do to Kindergarten, go listen to it, right? Your 5-year-old does not need a formal sit down, hardcore academic education. So we're all the veterans are jumping in with all that advice, right? And somebody who's like, we're doing kindergarten and we're using the good and the beautiful. We're doing kindergarten and we're using this. I bought handwriting without tears, right? They're in the same, but they're just as lost as you are, right?
Yeah.
They literally have they're only one step ahead of you because they've actually bought a program and you haven't, which I think is actually better that you haven't, right? So I'm not even saying like you're behind, right? They're just as inexperienced as you are. But because those people showed up to that post looking for a curriculum and someone handed them one on a silver platter, they're like, good and the beautiful, got it, on it, right?
Done.
And then
Yep.
it's like there. And all the veterans who were like, no, 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 right? They're like, they don't know what they're talking about. You've got it backwards, right?
Yeah.
Those of us who have done the thing for a really long time and saw how it played out years into the future have a pretty good pulse on what we're doing, right? Do not follow the people who are in the exact same boat as you, who are just starting and who also have very little foundation to work from. So
Yeah.
listen to your veterans. Do not listen to newbies, please. Please, please,
That's
please.
it. Yeah, no, exactly. And the other thing is, if you're listening to us and you're on social media, search the groups. Because the reality is the veterans have been saying the same things over and over for years. So every year they respond to a few less of these posts because it's
We're all
like,
tired.
yeah, like how many times do I have to type up? Like, look, you can do this or you can do that. And even for me, you know, like we had that episode and I understand, and I don't think that we need to do nearly as much, but I do understand that feeling of like, we need curriculum. Okay. So if you feel like you need curriculum, these are the couple things that I would do or focus on. Like you could pick this up and spend 30 minutes a day on it and enjoy the rest of your time, right? Like find the veterans who align with where you are. If you're not like, I can't just not have curriculum, that's fine. There are people out there who are like, my kid's much older. We did a little bit, but it doesn't have to be a full curriculum box. It doesn't have to be, it shouldn't be 2 or 3 hours a day for a kindergartner. It should not. Don't listen to the people who are telling you to buy the curriculum that makes it that. Like just don't. And you can find us, right? We're out there. There are so many veteran homeschoolers that really want to help and mentor. Yes, you can pay for a mentor and we do that as well. You can get one-on-one coaching with us and stuff like that. But we also provide a lot of free mentorship in a lot of spaces. There are a lot of people. But you know, if you're not willing to listen to the people who can actually mentor, like there's only so much we can do.
Yeah, it does make it pretty tough. So yeah, listen to veterans. Do not listen to newbies. The newbies mean well, but they don't have a foundation to work from. And they're just kind of telling you what they've heard from somebody else. It doesn't make it right. So
yeah, I researched all of them and I liked this one the best. So it's what we're going to try. There's nothing wrong with saying that, but it doesn't make it right or the best. Right?
Exactly. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody today who was like, I need something for kindergarten, and somebody chimed in, here's what we have. And one of their things was handwriting without tears. She said something about handwriting. And I said, like actual handwriting or handwriting prep where you're doing like activities with like, you know, cotton balls and tongs or something, you know, like hand strengthening. And she, oh no, actual handwriting. And I was like, your 5-year-old isn't ready for actual handwriting, right? Like they're physiologically not ready for you to plop a pencil in their hand and give them worksheets. Their hand isn't developed yet, right? And so it's not the case. And she was great. We ended up having kind of an engaged conversation, and she was like, when do you think is the time then? And I was like, oh my gosh, that's awesome, hooray, like, but
But that
so
is
many other times it's
yeah.
like, I've just added it to my cart, and I'm like, oh my gosh, here we go.
But
Right?
that's a hard one to let go, because kindergarten is 100% when kids in brick and mortar schools start learning the correct letter formation, right? And, if you have a kiddo who is really like dying to write and they're pretending like they're writing all the time and they're scribbling letters, maybe you do want to look at something like handwriting without tears, because it is a gentle version of like helping them learn to not write things upside down or like draw it backwards kind of thing. But it does not have to be. And if your kiddo isn't one of those that's picking up a pencil and pretending like they're writing things all the time with gibberish because they don't actually know anything yet, but they're, they want to, like, it's okay. And there are lots of great resources. Actually, I had kind of mentioned this before, not a plug at all, but I sell books on the side for Paper Pie, and they just came out with this new, not, they didn't just come out with it, but they are selling a new type of kind of like Play-Doh, except it has a better hand feel and it has a lower smell. So it's great
Oh,
for the sensory sensitive kiddos.
yes.
And they have a version that's gluten-free. And people are like, what does it matter if it's gluten-free? But come on now, we're talking about
Uh-huh.
kids playing with Play-Doh. If you have a gluten allergy or sensitivity, gluten-free matters,
Well,
right?
and
So,
even just tactile gluten-free, like I have to
mhm.
buy, because I have a kiddo with severe gluten allergy, his shampoos and stuff are all gluten-free because, yeah, so totally. That's fantastic. Because yeah, I have a kiddo that can't touch Play-Doh from a sensory perspective. So,
Yeah, that's it. And I'm sure, I mean, it is still a type of dough, but it has a better hand feel, it has a lower smell, and it's great. It's a bigger container than the normal size Play-Doh containers. And so, that's another one of those things that for a small kid, that kind of stuff, playing with that, rolling it out and forming the letters with dough and things like that, that is like a great way to be practicing letters. That's perfect in kindergarten and
yep.
first grade. That it does not have to be a workbook that they sit down and struggle through.
No, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree. What's next on your list of not regrets, but do-overs, Amanda?
Well, I think this one is actually kind of funny because we've almost swapped our roles here. So my thing would be, I would go to more museums and go out into the community and watch more documentaries and IMAX movies. Like our science center has IMAX movies that you can attend and things like that. It's complicated, right? Because for us, we started during the pandemic and we're in California where things stayed shut down for a lot longer. And because of my chronic health issues, even still, we are much more isolated and we're much more careful about unmasking in crowds and things like that, especially during waves and peaks and things like that. We just have to be for my health.
Mhm.
So I can't really, like, unless we started homeschooling at a different time, if we were homeschooling now, right? I would make sure that I went to more museums and things like
Right.
that. Because the reality is, even now, it's really easy to be like, we didn't get to any of the IMAX movies this summer, but that's okay. They won't be as busy starting fall, all the tourists will be gone and the kids will be back in school. And so we'll go to the IMAX movies, in September when we have more time. And there's never more time,
Yeah.
right? Like, there's just never more time. You always think it's going to get easier. You always think you're going to have more time, but there's not, so if those things are important, and they should be, it's one of the biggest advantages. Like, way more field trips and experiential learning is one of the biggest advantages of homeschooling. So schedule it, put it on your
Hmm.
calendar, make it a priority. Don't push it off. When we have more time next month, like, find a time, put it on your calendar and do it. Just schedule it in. It doesn't feel this spontaneous, we're homeschoolers and so we're just gonna whatever, but it does make sure that you do it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It can be hard to let that stuff go, especially if you are a little bit more homebody-ish, which post-pandemic we've become more homebody-ish than before. Not
Mm.
necessarily because of isolation, because we've started to live. I mean, we're still cautious. Like I don't like public doorknobs or anything, but like, like But we just discovered that we really like being homebodies during the pandemic. Like we were like,
Mhm.
this is pretty awesome. And so now we have to force ourselves to get out and like do the things a little bit more often. You know, my kids too, where they're like, do we have to though? We're like really happy at home. And I'm like, I know I am too, but I feel like we should get out a little bit. So so I
That's
can
it.
totally
You
see
always
that.
enjoy it, right? Like
Yeah.
you
Once you're
you
out.
hate yeah, you hate putting on clothes, you hate putting on sunscreen, you hate packing the bag with some snacks and some water. Like
Yes.
you hate the whole process, but you had a great time at
Yeah.
the museum and the IMAX theater or at the beach or like whatever it is that you actually went and did, and afterwards you're always like, "Oh, we should do that more." And then the
Yeah.
next time you go to do it, you're like,
Same thing.
"Oh, but I have to put on clothes and I have to get water." Like
I totally get that. Yes. Oh my gosh, I love it. Um, all right. I feel like our last one. So I had kind of filled mine in, and then Amanda filled hers in separately. And it's funny that I feel like our last ones kind of line up
Yeah.
in similarity a bit, right?
Mhm.
So as far as like thematic, they're along the same themes, right? So mine is I would have let go of things that my neurodivergent kids physically cannot do sooner. And I'm thinking specifically of handwriting. I am pretty hardcore when it comes to neurodivergent affirming action. I feel like you would not ask a blind person to try to see harder. I feel like you would not ask a type 1 diabetic to, kick their pancreas into gear with some yoga and, an essential oil. It's not a thing, right? And so I feel like, why do we not treat neurodivergence the same? It is so physically taxing for my two boys to try to handwrite something, more so for my oldest kid than my youngest one, even so. Um, just from a neurological standpoint, from a physiological standpoint, why was I so hung up on the fact that this kid has to write something? It's 2024, right? There's a million and one technology substitutions that exist. The world is slowly becoming more neurodivergent affirming, where you can get accommodations and things like that. He has a diagnosis, he has a diagnosis letter. It's not a big deal. And then it's really interesting to see there have been kind of these handful of things like in some instances, based upon his fine motor, I've been able to find exceptions for him. I think I might have talked about it before, like his snowboarding boots. He doesn't have lace-up snowboarding boots. He has ones that has kind of this like fancy crank mechanism system. He doesn't have traditional bindings for his snowboard. He has a step-in binding. Does it cost more money? Yes, it costs more money, but like that's what he needs, right? Then there's times where he has found a workaround for himself that's comfortable, where I'm not involved, and he himself has just kind of like water finding its path, right? He has just figured out what works for him. And then other times you'll see, and I'm an only child, so I don't have sibling dynamics to really understand firsthand. Um, but I watch my kids and I watch them take over for one another in really subtle and kind ways where there's a struggle. And so, like, even he'll be doing like, he plays a lot of Pokemon right now. You can do your Pokemon deck sheets online where you type them up and you print them out. But before you used to have to do them at the store, you'd have to show up, have your deck inspected, and then write up your thing. And it was really hard for him. The lines were so tiny, they were like smaller than college rules. And my daughter would be there and she would just kind of say like, why don't you read them out and I'll write them down, it'll go faster, right? And there was
Mhm.
never this kind of like, you can't do it so I'll do it, or him having to say, like, they just kind of gracefully glide in and help where they know another one struggles. And I feel like if you've built a really beautiful network, not just within your family but just in life, right, and you have your people that truly understand you, where you can show up as your authentic self, those sorts of things won't be an issue. So there's so many different ways that you can kind of tackle something like that without having to force a neurodivergent person to endure mental and or physical pain in order to meet a neurotypical standard. So that's kind of my last one. But yours is kind of
Yeah.
neurological related too, Amanda. What's yours?
It is. So I personally would have done a private educational assessment sooner. Um, Again, we're in California, and so our first couple years of homeschooling, we were technically enrolled in like a semi-virtual school through a brick and mortar where we didn't actually go in person, but we got some things from the school and we did other things ourselves. And then the last few years we've been in a true homeschool charter where they don't give us really anything, but we have a lot of oversight. And I spent the first several years of his official academic career asking the teachers, like, are you sure that this is okay? Are you sure he's where he's supposed to be? Because I really think that there's like a disconnect somewhere. And, it's fine. He's fine. He's doing great. He's doing great. It's fine. He's fine. And for the most part, I let them, and I don't think that they were doing it on purpose, but I really let them gaslight me about it. And when I finally kind of reached my breaking point and went to my pediatrician and explained to her my concern, she was like, oh yeah, you're going to have to get a private assessment. I think you're totally right. And I think the school is completely incapable of picking up on this and dealing with it because of his specific profile and combination of things. And in going, I always tell people when they ask, and I might have said it in the podcast before if you listen all the way through, I'm the asshole who found out my kid had a learning disability while also finding out that he was way more gifted than I thought, right? I took him specifically to someone who diagnosed specific types of learning disabilities because I had a pretty good idea of what I thought was going on. And she came out and said, he's the smartest kid I've ever tried to assess. And I was like, okay.
Like, are you going to hand me my Mother of the Year trophy now? Like, great.
No, for me, it was really one of those, like, we knew, I knew he was
bright.
Yeah, he was bright and he was, maybe just on the cusp of gifted, but because of his learning disabilities, whenever they would do standardized testing or, the standardized test that's supposed to identify the gifted kids for this program or for that or whatever, he would always just be like right on the cusp. And I'm like, I'm his mom. So, maybe I see things differently and I think he's more gifted than he actually is. And so, these kinds of things. And then when we actually did the assessment, it was like, oh no, like there's actually like a lot more going on there. And we could have been helping him years earlier. We could have been meeting him where he was at and giving him what he needed in ways that would have really been much more fulfilling for him years earlier if we had just done it. And we didn't because it was that thing. Well, like they know, like
they're
they
the experts.
They see they see hundreds of kids. And if they say it's normal, then, I guess it's normal. And so that would be the thing, like that, trust your mom gut, your mom intuition. Yes. And, for me, it was as simple as going to the pediatrician and instead of saying at the well visit, saying, yeah, no, everything is fine, saying, you know what, actually, I have this concern. This is what's going on. And her immediately being like, the school is not going to help you, but I have a list of people that I recommend. And I would definitely look at these two people based on this specific thing. So yeah.
And the super crappy bit of news, like the PS on that situation is, it all costs money, right? There's almost no way
so
to
expensive.
There's almost, if you're dealing with the school, you can get testing done. The validity, the timing, there's a lot of issues there. To get a private assessment, unfortunately, costs a ton of money. And so it's not accessible for everyone. We totally understand that. It completely sucks. We agree with you that it is unfair, right? So it stinks, but we're all just doing our best. So we've got this. So we hope some of that has been helpful. Please, please, please. Like, we're not making it up for the sake of fun. Like, you can trust us. It's going to be okay. You're going to do awesome. So we are sharing them so that you don't have to learn and years later be like, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have spent all that money on curriculum the first year and, all that kind of stuff. So we hope it's been helpful. So we shall wind ourselves down with a student spotlight. Last week we ran out of time and we didn't get to spotlight this amazing student. So I'm super excited that we do today. So here we go.
Student Spotlight. We don't judge bragging here. We celebrate with you.
That is for sure. So we have a submission from Tara who says, my 11-year-old is, well, 11. Right? she, yes, she is starting to go through puberty, and there is an abundance of hormones and feelings, which can be big. She dumps all her emotions on me, which is fine. I am her safe space. We have a 4-year-old neighbor that she babysits, and when I see her interact with him, I know that I didn't totally mess things up. She is kind and patient and gives him her whole attention. The way she bends down to his level to talk to him is admirable. The way she helps him calm down when he's upset is praiseworthy. The way she sits through the same episode of Bluey time and time again is commendable. She will babysit anywhere from 4 to 6 hours and never need assistance. They read, they play, they create, and so on. And I think, how in the world did she learn to be so kind and helpful and caring and patient? Well, it's me. She is headstrong and fiercely independent, but she is also generous and an overall fantastic human. Most parents, especially mothers, have a hard time giving themselves credit for a job well done. This is me all day long. But as I see my daughter out in the world, I realize that I am doing okay if I do say so myself. And it is okay to say so. You're like, those moments are awesome when you step back and be like, maybe I'm not totally screwing this thing up. This is great. So if you are another parent listening, Tara wants to say, I see you and you are doing an amazing job. Yes, I love that.
Yeah, right. I think it's that thing. It's so easy because we're with them day in and day out, right? And I don't know about in your house, but of course we encourage manners and respect and please and thank you and all of that kind of stuff. But in your home, in your day to day, there's not a ton of, can you please hand me the Grey Poupon? It's just, it's day to day life. And so when you actually see them out in the real world and you see them doing these things, or you get this chance to actually see oh my, they are they're learning those lessons at home and they're actually doing it outside of our home. And I don't have to stand there and be like, what do we say? The toddler years. Okay. And what do we say? Thank you.
Do you want to close us out with our mantra for the week, Amanda?
I would love to. All right. So this week we have, in our homeschool journey, we paint with the colors of curiosity and sketch with the lines of laughter. It's a great visual.
Absolutely. I do love that. We talk about imagination and fancy quite a bit on the podcast, and maintaining that for as long as possible. And so I can visualize that in there, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Well, friends, we hope that your early homeschool years are smooth and that you can hopefully smooth it out that much more, but with some veteran advice. And thank you so much for tuning in and listening today. We have our book club episode coming up in a couple of days where we'll be talking about college admissions. So if you're just starting your homeschooling journey, we're talking about the end of the homeschooling journey too. And it's never too early to kind of start getting a feel for what that road might look like. But in the meantime, thanks for joining us and happy homeschooling.
Yeah, have a great one.